What's good, Phins Nation? Today we lost the dawn of Dolphins football, and in my opinion, the greatest coach of all time. My football journey wouldn't have started without Dan Marino, who was my idol growing up, and I wouldn't be a Dolphins fan sitting before all of you with a Dolphin Center channel if Don Shula didn't take him as he slid in the '84 draft. We've heard the word hope thrown around a lot these past few weeks for the first time in a long time, but with Coach Shula, every year we had that same hope. One of my best football memories was also one of my hardest, as me and my dad spent the whole afternoon watching Shula and Marv Levy in a coaching battle during the 92-93 AFC Championship. And though we lost, the memory is still fond of me, and I owe all of that to Coach Shula. He made you proud to be a Dolphins fan. He gave us an achievement in the perfect season that we can hold over any team in any major sport, that being a perfect season. He was also a great businessman off the field, and let's be honest, no one in the history of mankind has ever rocked a pair of aviators the way the Don did. I know you'll be smiling down on all of us one day when the Miami Dolphins win their next Super Bowl, and every time an undefeated team loses their first game in a season, you'll be the first person Fin Nation will think of. Coach Shula said, "I don't know any other way to lead but by example," and Coach, you set the best example so far of what it is to be a class act and a winner. Rest in power, Coach Shula. What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show for another one. I'm not going to have the usual happy opening. It's a somber day for Dolphins fan. It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, loss in franchise history. But we got Jason Sarney on here from Phinmaniacs. We got Esteban, who you all know from TD Phins Talk. And we got the Jason Taylor to my Zach Thomas, EMdolphinfan. What's going on, everyone?
What's going on, man?
What's going on, buddy?
Fin Nation. What's good?
So, Jason, let's start with you. I know you've had Richmond Webb on recently. I'm sure you guys have exchanged Shula stories too. But when you look back at Don Shula, what do you owe to him as a Dolphins fan?
A great deal. And you had a really beautiful opening reason. I thought it was got me choked up. I'm going to do my best. I'm an emotional guy. I got a lot of tears out already. I owe him, I would say, if you want to say percentage-wise, I'm going to say 75%. And the reason why I say 75% is because he was the reason why Dan Marino was a Dolphin. He drafted Marino, and the easy answer for me has always been Dan Marino is the reason why I'm a huge Dolphin fan. But then when you go back and then you understand the franchise, you understand, as you said, what he gave to us, what he gave to the 70s, what he gave to the 80s, the 90s, and even those individuals who didn't get an opportunity to watch Dan play, the undefeated season. It's something that us as a fan base, that's the only fan base in any sport that has what we can say. Take away a college football team or two. But to me, growing up, I grew up in New York, so I had highlights. I had a lot of cutaways. I didn't see the full game in New York against Philadelphia where Don Shula broke the record with his win totals, but I got the cutaway. I got the last 6 minutes of the game, and that was a memory that I would always remember. And I just remember people were fighting to put him on the shoulder. There's something about Don, and you mentioned Richmond, and Richmond has said that on the show. You read quotes of what is out there from the press conferences today. Players love this man, not just for being a coach, for being a leader, for being a life mentor, a father figure. I don't want to just name drop names and players. You guys just read what's out there. This man was more than just an X's and O's coach. He was everything to a lot of these players. And to me, he gave me that ultimate trump card argument. If I'm arguing with the Jet fans as a 15-year-old Dolphin fan after a bad loss to, Boomer Esiason's Jets or whatever. I said, watch 72 undefeated. Leave me alone. And that was almost like my saving grace. So that history, that team, much more so the way he lived his life. Quotes like, never run inside a pylon. It's a metaphor. That's not just not cutting an edge when you're running a wind sprint or running around the field. You don't take a shortcut in life. And that's something that, as a 39-year-old father of 2 boys, an 8, and tomorrow will be a 5. This is an emotional day for me because tomorrow is my 4 to be 5-year-old birthday, named Jordan. And Jordan, there you go, reason. So to me, it's a way to live. This man coached how he lived, and I like to live how he coached, if that makes a lot of sense. And if I'm coming on into a show, I'm preparing. If I'm about to go teach my son how to do something, I'm preparing. And that's because of Shula. And everything in my life, even if it was doing an essay on, the Boston Tea Party in high school, I was preparing like Don Shula prepared for the Patriots or the Colts or the Bills or the Jets. Remember, the Colts used to be a rival. But I love the man. I've never met the man. And my condolences go out to the Shulas and his extended family and to anyone like yourself, Reason, Esteban, any fan who shed a tear today. Because I sure as heck did. And I probably won't. That's not my last tear shed.
For sure. TD, what's going on, brother?
What's going on, Reason, man? What's going on? How y'all doing tonight?
We're living, brother. We're surviving. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm glad you had me on real quick. I just want to say a few things, if y'all don't mind. I hope I'm not interrupting.
The floor is yours, brother.
I just wanted to say, man, I learned a lot tonight because I was streaming right before this, and I learned a lot myself about Don Shula and his greatness. And it's always a great thing to hear from those who experienced them. I mean, and were even alive whenever he was able to show his greatness back in the 70s and the 80s. And I was born in 85, so I missed a lot of it, but I still was able to see some of the later days in the 90s. And I didn't even know much about football now. And now I'm growing a much greater appreciation for the man he was. A lot of things that I heard tonight about Don Shula was how he was able to influence these players to become great men, even off the field. And those are the things that go a long way. And also talking about how it relates to Brian Flores now, a lot of the similarities that people see and Flores from Don Shula. And I learned, this is sad to say, but I learned today that this man only had 2 losing seasons in 33 years of being a coach. That where they do that at, and in Miami they did for that amount of time because of this man, the most winning coach. And I'm just floored by how great an individual can be in his lifetime. And that's why I felt it was necessary to celebrate him tonight. And I'm so glad to see y'all over here on Phinside, the NFL, doing the same thing. And I just wanted to say 2 more things, and I'll move on and let you guys do your thing. But two things that stood out to me with Shula. One was a quote that he said, which was, "Success is not forever, and failure isn't." Success is not forever, and failure isn't fatal. And that's huge, and that resonates even in my life, and maybe you guys' life too. To where failure isn't fatal. You know, don't be scared to go through things, because if you fail, it's not going to kill you. And I love that. And another thing I love that I heard today that he said was, "I'll take your team and beat you in it, and take my team and beat your team." And that's like the ultimate level of swag and cockiness that he brought to Miami. And man, I hope and pray that those days are coming here to Miami soon, and we have the right coach that can also deliver that type of passion, desire, and intensity within the organization to raise young men and make them men and go out there and win for us, man.
Yeah, and I mean, to even go further in that, when you look at his 26 seasons with the Dolphins, those were where he had his 2 losing seasons. So he had 24 of 26 were winning. And since Don Shula, so without Don Shula, we've had 28 seasons and 15 of those have been losing. So it's, that right there shows how good we had it and how, I know TD, we knew around the same age, and I know you remembered the battles I was talking about in my opening statement about the battles with the Bills and stuff like that. That's the reason why I hate the Bills more than the Patriots and why I hate them more than the Jets, because that's when I was in the thick of being a fan, were those legendary battles with the Bills. And when you just look at what we had, and when you look past Marino, when you just look at the impact we had with that person being in our organization, not many teams next to Bill Belichick right now with the Patriots even come close to having what we had with him. You know what I mean?
All. And we know that our coach, not to get on any other coach, but our coach did it the right way, with integrity, no asterisks, no questions, no wondering what they're doing. He did everything the right way.
You heard about the Raiders story, right? So before a player came to him before a playoff game with the Raiders. Yeah, a player came to him before the playoff game with the Raiders, and he had found the Raiders playbook.
Wow.
And he brought it to Shula, and Shula said, "Throw it away. We don't cheat." And the Dolphins still won the game.
Class personified, man.
Yeah.
He wouldn't accept if he wouldn't accept the win if it was dirty. He out-prepared you by the traditional methods of out-preparing you, not by getting a cheap edge.
Actually, I remember that story, and Zonka was the one that had brought that up. And they actually lost that game, and Zonka was upset because he was like, "Why did the guy that he didn't personally hand it to Shula? He handed it to somebody else to hand it to Shula, and whoever this guy was that he handed it to, he asked him, what's the deal? We had the playbook. What happened with this?" And that's when the guy told him. He said, "He told me to throw it away, throw it in the trash. We don't do that. We're not going to do it." I mean,
hey, we know somewhere in this country there's a coach up north that would have been like, hey, pass it right here.
Yeah.
But on that note, I'm sorry.
No, you good, TD. Go ahead, bro.
I was gonna say on that note, because I have to go get the kids down. But thank y'all for having me, man. I love what y'all doing over here, and I see what y'all doing.
Yeah.
And I'm Marvel, man. Thank y'all so much for doing what y'all doing. We love y'all.
Much love, TD. Always, homie.
Yeah, was that the Sea of Hands game? Was that the Sea of Hands game that they lost in '74? Because that was when they played Oakland in the playoffs.
I think so.
Was it?
So
I think so.
I just remember whenever I heard it interpreted, it was through Zonka, and Zonka was upset that they lost the game and they had
Zonka. Wouldn't have Zonka been on the team in '74? They lost by I think like 2 points.
No, he went up to I think they didn't sign him after the '73 season because he went up to a different league with Warfield and Kick.
I'd have to go look back at that game. But that's the famous playoff game, is the Sea of Hands game where we lost by 2 points to Oakland, right? So I have to go look and see if Zonka's in that. But EM, let's hear what you have to say about all this.
Yeah, man. It's a sad day. I'm feeling it just like everybody else. When I heard the news today, man. I definitely felt some type of way about the passing of Mr. Shula. I mean, what can you not say about him when you think about his on-the-field contributions to the game? At the end of the day, you cannot tell this 100-plus year history of this game, the story of this game, without having a huge, huge, huge chapter devoted to Don Shula. And when I look back on his career, 33 years, it's just a model of consistency. I mean, it just doesn't get any more consistent than what he was able to achieve in this league at the highest level. 33 years, two losing seasons throughout that time. Look at the quarterbacks, that he had. He had a huge, he was a huge reason for developing these quarterbacks and making them, the players that they ultimately turned out to be, from Johnny Unitas to Bob Greasy to Dan Marino. I think now y'all might have to fact check me on this, but to my knowledge, I can't recall one coach ever, coaching 3 Hall of Fame quarterbacks throughout, over the duration of his career. Yeah, I might be wrong. I'm not 100% correct on that, but to my knowledge, I can't recall any coach that has been that instrumental in developing these guys, to Hall of Fame status. So that alone is a huge achievement in itself. And again, model of consistency. But today, as I was working and I was working and I was on Twitter and different Facebook and Instagram, and what stuck out to me the most is the impact that he had on players from other organizations throughout the league. Not only his era, but even in today's game. I looked at the respect that Doug Peterson who ultimately I think played quarterback for Shula at one point in time in his career.
He did. He did. Yeah, he put it out today. Yeah, that was really good.
Yeah, look at the respect that he showed to this man today. I mean, it just took the whole league in its entirety. And I just wasn't aware, and I apologize for this, I wasn't aware of the impact that he had on so many other people outside of the Dolphins organization. I was listening to Brian Cox, today, and how Don Shula, when Miami drafted him, he was somewhat of a wild child, to quote his words. And he said Shula really was one of the first father figures, type of individuals that actually took him under his wing and actually taught him how to be a man off the field. You know what I mean? And I hear stories, story after story after story from players, coaches, that, it's a common theme, it's a common thread between all of them. And they all say, similar things about Don Shula, about the impact that they had on their lives off the field. And that to me struck out the most. I wasn't aware that he was that impactful of people's personal, people's lives off the field. So to that, I apologize. But yeah, man, model of consistency. Again, we're the only team in professional sports with a perfect season. I think no team will ever eclipse that record. And yeah, man, it's a sad day, but then again, you sit back and you just remember him and the contributions that he made to this game that we all love. It just blows you away, man, at the impact on and off the field that he had. So
Esteban, I don't think we got your full thoughts, so give her.
Well, whenever the news broke, it was actually through TD's one of his updates to my phone, or one of his notifications. So to be honest, man, it's just one of those things where you lose a piece of your childhood. For me, man, it was a big deal for me. I just don't show it. Like, I can't drop tears because I don't know him personally, but what he meant to me as a young kid growing up in Texas was everything, man. Just his image. Him walking back and forth on the sideline, man. It was a big deal. I kind of hovered around being a Dolphin fan for like a year because the Cowboys had just won, but I never chose them as my team. It was like, my entire family everybody was Cowboys fans. They had just won the Super Bowl. And me and my brother would just preach to me about Marino, man. And so those are the thing about Marino was he brought an eye to the Dolphins franchise. So you living in Texas, you actually get to watch Dolphins games. Maybe not all of them, but a good majority of those games, man, we got to watch them. And I think the first time that I just fell in love with the franchise was the following year. I think it was like 92 after the Cowboys had won. There was a Thanksgiving game. It was a snow game. And I was really pulling for them in that game. Why? I mean, I guess it was because of Marino. But I don't even think Marino played in that game. And they ran the ball. That's what I was impressed with, was there was a point in that game where they were just running the ball. and picking up yards, and they weren't known for that. Long story short, they should have lost the game, blocked the field goal. Actually, they were attempting a field goal that got blocked by the Cowboys. I think Leon Lett blocked it, and he went
Leon Lett touched it.
It was a dead ball. They just needed to leave it alone. Leon Lett went and tried to scoop it up. Dolphins fell on it, landed on the 1 yard line, got 3 attempted field goal, won the game, and I just fell in love with him ever since then, man. And I just remember Shula wearing that starter's jacket, those shades, the aviators, man. He had, his hat. I mean, that's what I remember. Man, dude, I remember when I was a kid, I'd get into fights in elementary. I remember I specifically got into 2 fights as a kid, man, just in restrooms because kids would, they were just angry that I wasn't a Cowboy fan, man. But, dude, that's the way it was when I grew up, man. Growing up in Texas, everybody was a Cowboy.
You're lucky you didn't have the strap pulled out on you because you're in Texas, bro.
Yeah, man. I remember I had to go to the counselor, and they were like, "What's the problem? Why are you getting into fights?" And, I didn't want to say that it was because it was bickering or if it was me. I would point it more to, I think I was directing it towards anger. And what it really was about football. It was about the teams that we like, man. And yeah, man, I got into a lot of fights because I was a Dolphins fan growing up as a kid, man. But I wouldn't change anything, man. I wouldn't change anything about it. But
and when you look at him, like, he took 4 different quarterbacks to Super Bowl appearances, and all 4 different quarterbacks, Unitas, Marino, Morel, and Greasy, they all have different styles. And he was able, me and Ian were talking about this. If you look at what he went from in the 70s to what he adapted the game to in the 80s when he got Marino, next to inventing the West Coast offense like Bill Walsh, he was pretty good at changing with the times and pretty effective. And, I know a lot of people harp on him for not winning, and another thing me and Ian talked about earlier, a lot of people who don't know the whole situation don't know that the reason why him and Joe Robbie's whole relationship really kind of fizzled out there for a while was because Joe Robbie wouldn't spend money to put talent on the team, right? So especially in the 80s, right? 83, 84, 85. And that's when they started having a bad relationship. So, me and Ian were talking about this too. Like, it just seems like when you go outside of knowledgeable football fans, the Miami Dolphins fans, and NFL fan bases to the casual fan, Shula doesn't get the respect he deserves. And, is it because he didn't win it with Marino?
I think the league was changing, to be honest. You had high-powered, complete teams. Like in the 90s, you had the Cowboys and you had the 49ers.
With the Bills.
And the Bills.
Just kind of, yeah. And
Hall of Famers on both sides of the ball.
I'm right there with you, man. I have more of a hatred towards the Bills and the Jets than I ever do of the Patriots. I would
agree to that. But
that's just the way I grew up.
Yeah, I hate the Bills too, yeah.
Yeah, I remember going to school after Monday night games where we had big leads on the Jets, man, and the Jets would freaking come back and beat us, man.
That Monday Night Miracle game was one of the worst games of my life. But
oh my God, I know.
I think they did it like 2 or 3 years, man.
Yeah.
2 or 3 years they had comebacks on us like that on Monday in prime time, man. So those days were difficult. I remember when I was growing up, man. It started off as a Marino fan, but I was really intrigued by Brian Cox growing up, like the nose
with the neck pad, yeah, man, and he was mad.
Hey, remember that time?
When they got Zach Thomas, I was like, "Who's this guy?"
Remember when he flipped off? Remember when he
came out with the crowd, flipping the crowd. Oh my God, bro!
That's why everyone loved Brian Cox.
Funny little thing about that. Man. Brian Cox, if you look at the pictures, go Google a picture of the Brian Cox when he walks in that way. Don Shula is 5 feet behind him. And it didn't matter because you know what? Like, there was no Twitter. It didn't matter. Don Shula didn't care that somebody was walking in, flipping double birds to. That's a winning edge. That's fine, man. Yeah. And you don't see that these days. But Shula was probably so focused in on what he was doing in the first couple of plays. He didn't care. But that was just the fire that his players had to go walk into a place to go play for the guy.
You know what I love? You know what I love? Cox walking out, giving the double birds is cool, but Randy Moss fake mooning Packers fans after a touchdown is end of the world. So you go figure that logic out.
Yeah.
Different
Yeah.
time.
Cox was my guy, man.
Oh,
Cox
yeah.
was definitely my guy.
Bro,
So
when I go back and watch film with Cox on it, it brings back that nostalgia from being a kid, man. Definitely does, man.
No, you can't. I love the guy, but you can't tell me he wasn't juiced, bro. I don't care what anyone says to me.
Brian Cox?
Oh yeah.
Brian?
Oh yeah.
No way, man. Juice.
Bro, that guy was like, he was like if Bosworth was actually really good. Like,
well, you would never know. But if he was juicing, you never could tell by his physique, bro, because he never was one of the ones that was considered. And that's his own mission.
He was just large.
It's been a long time since we've had nasty players like Zach Thomas and Cox, man. I mean, those guys are nasty, bro. Just we've had
Zach
people not like that,
Zach
man.
was my guy as well.
So, guys, are we gonna have to wait to order the 2 jerseys because of the pending Don Shula patch that's probably gonna come this year?
They might come out.
Gotta be a patch.
There has to
Gotta
be.
put something on
It's
it.
got to be. I hope so. It's got to
Well,
be.
what's the
They're
deal?
gonna
Did
do
he ever get his number? Is he number 1?
No, he hasn't announced his number yet. That's the thing that the Dolphins community is arguing with each other about right now. It's no longer Herbert or Tua. Now it's Tua's number. That's the new topic. But
I don't know if you guys have
You're
ever.
going to argue if tomorrow's Tuesday. There's nothing you can do.
but do you guys think that a patch? Do you guys think are we gonna rock a patch this year for sure?
Yeah, they should, bro.
I don't know if there's rules. I don't know if there's anything. They should do something immediately. But
I think the whole.
who knows what's going to happen with this year?
I think the whole league should, bro.
The whole league,
considering his contribution
certainly
to
on the
this game
helmet.
again.
Certainly on the back of the helmet.
Yeah.
Based off his
Maybe
contribution to this game. Absolutely, the entire league should, bro.
100%. There has to be something. Even I'll tell you what, I wouldn't go. I mean, he's the and I gotta get out of here. I gotta do the dad thing as well. But he's the all-time NFL leader in wins.
That's what I was
so
going
you
to
know
say.
what?
Exactly.
Put the number.
So let me hit you with this.
Put the number on the field.
I saw this today. Do you do something at the 3, the 7, and the 4, or do you measure out the 37.4 yard line and put a special hash there in Miami for the amount of wins he had?
I think that whatever they do, it will be done very well and very classy. I mean, look, let's go the last 5, 6, 7 years of the Dolphins front office, the organization, how they're being run from top to bottom. Forget about wins, losses, drafted players, whatever. This organization knows what they're doing from a business standpoint, and whatever they do will be done, I think, tremendously well, in good taste, and probably in coordination with the NFL, if I might throw it in there, because you have to honor the man. I mean, he's on the Mount Rushmore of NFL faces in the league.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Honestly, I know it would cost a lot, Jason, but I'm totally for renaming Hard Rock Don Shula Stadium because, I mean, his statue's already out front.
I've seen that.
Didn't the league?
What won't be able to happen is the naming rights.
Yeah,
you can't take naming rights off. What I would imagine is if you could maybe create some sort of a section. Maybe it's the field, maybe it's the concourse.
Yeah.
But what I will say,
if I'm not mistaken,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they do something for Bill Walsh when he passed as well? The league, in terms of the whole league, didn't they do something for him?
I don't remember.
I'm not so sure on that, but I'll get out of here with this, that the NFL probably will do something. The Dolphins will do something. If it's in coordination, great. But favorite Don Shula story that I heard through a show a couple of years ago, was how, again, the father figure that he is. And he was a father figure to players. And me being a dad, those are the stories that I love the most. So there was, legendary Dolphin public relations man, Harvey Green, was a legendary Yankee PR man. He was Don Shula's right-hand guy. He one of his jobs was, in the 80s to always give him the Alabama score for his son Mike as a quarterback. They get off the flight. What's the Alabama score? What's the Alabama score? And that just says a lot to me that they land, they touch down. The first thing that he says really is, what's the score of my son's game? And the funny thing is, it's sometimes he didn't actually have the score, Harvey. So one time he just went 0-0 in the top with a couple minutes left in the first. And Don was like, all right, that works. And he just totally just set it off the cuff. But the man was always thinking about his family, about his team, about his players, and genius, another level thinker, another level football mind. And the world, we all lost a good one. And I want to thank you, Reese, for having me on in the special show. You did a great job with your words, and Esteban, of course, TD. Thank you guys for bringing me on. And the tide is turning, so to speak, and we will all, as fans, honor Coach Shula. And I think this team is going to come out of the gate swinging to honor this man.
Absolutely.
So thanks again, guys. And
it's always a pleasure, man. Always a pleasure.
All right? Fins up, and thanks to everybody. Be well.
Have a good one.
Be safe, Jason.
Good night, guys. Thanks, Jordan.
No problem, brother. And we got an announcement, guys, coming in a couple weeks with Jason Sarney. We're going to be doing some things with him this offseason moving forward. So we're going to start off with Havoc, who's been waiting patiently, guys, and we'll bring him on. Esteban, I don't know if you want to stick around or not, but we're going to go through and take some people from backstage, if that's cool with you.
Yeah, that's fine.
What's going on, Havoc?
Havoc, what's good?
What's up, buddy?
I think your mic, brother. I think you're muted. You're muted or something. Yeah, you're muted, brother. Is your mic plugged in? If you take your headphones out, then out of the device, then the mic will probably work. That's what it does. Nope. Yeah, I can't hear you, brother. I'm gonna put you backstage and then see if you can figure it out, and I'll come back to you, brother, after Larry. Larry, what's going on, buddy?
Hey guys. Well, it's a sad day, but happy day. A man who lived a wonderful life. Now, what I want to say real quickly was I was blessed. I actually moved into Miami in 1982. So I was blessed to see the Dan Marino and Shula eras. And now, one thing I want to say, people who didn't live that era didn't understand how much this man meant to the community and how much he did for Miami. Okay, not only him, but Miami was blessed with 3 great coaches that really helped create the aura that's Miami today, the city itself. Okay, it was Jimmy Johnson, Don Shula, and Pat Riley. Okay. And I just want to point that out to you guys, okay? Yeah, we're talking about the football. That's awesome. But he was so much more to the community. He literally was one of the forces behind making Miami the city that it is today, respected around the world and all that, type deal. So just want to put that in there for you guys. And I lived through it, so I know what it was like. I remember when South Beach was slum, okay? You had elderly people that lived in these hotels, so-called hotels back then, but really slums. And the reason they would live there because they got their Social Security. That's all they could, that's all they get out of people back then. But then came Johnson and then Shula and then Riley. Now, one other thing, and I'm going to go out and let other people talk because I can talk. But I always say the 2 great, I don't care what anybody else says, the 2 greatest coaches ever. Okay, there are a lot of great coaches, but the greatest ever were Shula and Riley. Okay, Why I say that?
Pat Riley? You're talking about Pat Riley.
Pat
right?
Riley, right. Why I said that? Because TD hit it on the nose. In 33 years, he only had 2 losing seasons. Both Riley and Shula, they had one common denominator. Now, it's true of all great coaches, discipline. Okay? It was discipline number one. But personally, these 2 men were above head of anybody else in their sports because they could adapt. Okay? Shula adapted to a quarterback, the Hall of Fame quarterback that threw 14 passes a game. He was the ultimate game manager. Come on, guys. Greasy was the ultimate game manager. Okay. Then comes along this rookie that he drafted. Now he was a coach. He admitted because I attended one of his fundraisers back then. My company had a fundraiser, and he was the keynote speaker. And he talked about Marino. You know, he had his coaching scouting staff told him about this great quarterback. Remember, he's coach is worried about NFL Sundays, not going to games. Never saw Marino play personally, and only saw the film. Okay, so the first day of training camp, that was the OTAs back then. Okay, training camp was the first day. Okay, so he's out there in the field talking to a couple of coaches, and all of a sudden, here's the ball whizzing right by him. Zoom, zoom, zoom. So what the? And he was telling us, what was that? Who's that? And he turned around. It was Marino. That's when he knew he had a great quarterback because he could just hear the way Marino threw the ball, and I mean, unbelievable. But let me get back to I'm saying they're the greatest. Yeah, people talk about Bill Walsh. Yeah, Bill Walsh is a great system coach. Okay, what happened if he doesn't have players for the system? Can he win with those players? We'll find. Nobody will find out. But both Riley and Shula won with different. They adapted their coaching to the talent they had to get the maximum out of them.
I'm with you on Don Shula, but I got to emphatically disagree on Pat Riley.
Yeah, I got to go Phil Jackson, brother.
No, it's all about Greg Popovich, baby.
Okay.
It's Greg Popovich.
I got to go Phil.
Yeah, okay, wait a minute. This is my argument, okay? Riley won with Showtime. Great offensive team, okay? He run with, and I'm a New Yorker before I moved. He won with a bunch of thugs, okay? Not exactly talented people, with John Starks and Patrick Ewing and Anthony whatever and Charles Oakley, bunch of thugs, not exactly super talented basketball, but a bunch of thugs. He won with them, and he won with a combo type with Shaq and Wade. Okay, won with different kinds of teams, different kinds of styles. Okay, so yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I don't see that from. Show me any other coach that did that, other than Shula and Riley.
That'd be Greg Popovich. That'd be Greg Popovich.
He's been using to say he had a great players that fit into the system. He never had to coach.
I emphatically disagree with that. I emphatically disagree
that's
with that.
basketball. We won't get into that. By the way, Ian, I love your comment. I agree with you 100%. The whole league should honor him with a little patch on the helmet that they do all the time with DS.
Absolutely.
Every team should have that. Not just the Dolphins. Absolutely. Every team should have it. Because the man meant so much to football, meant so much to the city, and all that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Just the league in general, man.
Yeah, exactly. So, so like I said, discipline is what they brought, and that's what he taught his players. That's what he taught in life in general, is about discipline, and also about community and how important family and community is. And he practiced what he preached. He went so much to the community. He was out there helping revitalize the city. He was part of planning commissions to do that. People don't realize that and all that stuff. Using his name that he gained from the Super Bowls to do that. Well, guys, let me go. Yeah.
I gotta admit though, when I tell people all the time I'm loyal to the logo, I mean that 110%. So I try not to get as personal with, the coaches, the players, the front office, all members of the organization. So I take it to a certain level, and then I don't go beyond that level. So again, this just blew me away. I feel bad because, I've never, I wasn't aware of the impact that, again, like I said earlier, the impact that Shula had on the entire league, man. I mean, not just
society in general, not just
just in general. I mean, the impact that they had on their personal life. I just never really researched Don Shula in, to that level, because I would have known. But yeah, I just felt bad today to some degree that I wasn't aware of just the overall personal impact that I was aware, obviously, of his contributions on the field, but it's just off the field. I was like, wow, this guy had that kind of impact on all of these. Again, these individuals are outside of the Miami Dolphin organization.
Mm-hmm.
And it just blew me away. It just literally blew me away. I mean, players.
And another
coaches.
thing is, too, a lot of people don't realize even how good of a player he was when he played, right?
yeah.
I mean, he had 21 interceptions. Like, he was no slouch when he played either, right? And he's part of one of the largest trades in NFL history, a 15-man player trade. So I think people forget, people just look at him as the coach. People don't even – people see Shula Steakhouse and Shula Burger, but they don't realize how savvy of a businessman he was as too, right? He's kind of pigeonholed as that coach, right? When so many other things.
In 2000 and I think it was 2012, I believe. There's a Shula Steakhouse down here in downtown Fort Worth, and my girl at the time, it was a surprise. I had no idea that even Don Shula had a steakhouse, bro. Well, in Texas. I'd heard about it in in Florida and whatnot. But so I got surprised with that. My brother, his wife, my sister, her husband, and everybody, because it's expensive, bro. It's like $100 a plate. And man, I think it was in 2012. I had a surprise birthday party. We got those. Everybody pitched in and gave us those gift cards, gift certificates, or whatever. And we went downtown. I was like, man, I walked in there, dude. I was like, oh my God, I'm in Shula Steakhouse, baby. It was like, man, we had a blast that night. And just crazy. And like when you walk in, you see all his contributions to, the NFL in general, but obviously the Colts, the Dolphins, and very nice, classy place. And that his restaurants out here is just a reflection of how he was. What I found out today of the level of class that he modeled on a daily day basis every day of his life. So it was really cool experience, man.
Thanks for coming on, Larry.
Yeah, one more quick thing, okay? And this is a very positive. Flores is off to a great start, and he got a long way to match Shula's record. But the one thing, remember I brought it up last year, the one thing this team did that was Shula's team, symbolic of a Shula team, it was discipline, one of the least penalized teams. Even though how terrible they were and how many players they come in and out, they were still one of the most disciplined teams. So it's a great start to his career, and it's a Shula trait. So hopefully, our fingers crossed.
Only 342 more wins for Flores.
I know, it's a start. It's a start. And plus, we got one more season. That's with 33 more, 32 more. Okay, guys, have a great day. And like I said, it's a sad day, but it's a good day to remember Shula. He lived a good life, and he was great.
For sure. Thanks a lot, brother. Dwayne, what's going on, brother? You've been sitting back there patiently.
Hey, gentlemen, how you doing today?
Dwayne, what's good, man?
What's going on? First of all, I'd like to thank y'all for giving me an opportunity to express my condolences to the Shula family and to the Dolphin family. We've all had a loss. My connection with the Dolphins, and it go back to 1971. And I can recall that loss to the Cowboys and how that drove him to put the pedal to the metal to that 72 team and that 73 team. This man was a leader. This man was a disciplinarian. And the fact that he led all those different quarterbacks, and you forgot one that he also led to the Super Bowl, and that was David Woodley as well. So did
David Woodley play in the Super Bowl too?
David Woodley played in the Super Bowl, the Super Bowl against the Redskins. So that was before Marino and in between and after Greasy. So he's taken three Dolphin quarterbacks to the Super Bowl and has managed Unitas, Morrill as well. So he's had some impacts on the Super Bowl as well. But this man was also part of the rules committee. So his impact on the game every year was felt. I mean, the fact that we have instant replay is because of Don Shula and the committee that brought it about. So you think about what he's meant to the community, what he's meant to the NFL. And I remember the first time that I experienced a loss by the Dolphins was when I was about 9 years old. I had gone almost 2 years without experiencing a loss. When you think about it, I'm talking about, and that loss I'm talking about is a playoff loss. They went 26-2, won 2 Super Bowls, and then that third season, the season that they lost, after they lost Larry Zonka, Jim Kick, and Paul Warfield to the WFL, just before that, they had lost to the Raiders. And that was the first playoff loss that I experienced since 1971. So I went 3 years.
The Sea of Hands game, right?
The Sea of Hands games. Clarence Davis. Oh man, that hurts. Still hurts. Still bothers me. Okay. But you think about the impact that he had, the joy that he's brought. Nobody can, I mean, you say the jaw, you think about Shula. It's the image. When you think about what he stood for, 33 years, wasn't no burnout like Dick Vermeil. 33 years doing the same thing every week, okay, and doing it without the benefit of the internet, without the benefit of Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, where you have the ability to pass film to players, instant access. You had to be a leader to make people believe in what you were preaching, what you were talking about, and to get 47, at that time it was 47-man rosters, 47 individuals to work as one and do it consistently at a high expectation for those 3 years, and then only have 2 losing seasons in 33 years. So he brought that same work ethic, that same standard to every single team that he touched. And that knowledge and that setting the standard comes from his playoff days, his playing days, his relationships with Paul Brown as well, and going through having to deal with see, now everybody's spoiled now because the current owner, he'll spend the money. He'll spend the money. But when you think about Joe Robbie, Joe Robbie.
That's why they had kind of a bad relationship there in the 80s.
He did not spend that money. He held on to every nickel he could. So to be successful in that environment, as well as develop men that would go on and be successful in other facets of their lives going forward, that's a success. The impact that he had on his own family, to just imagine the joy that you have watching both of your sons end up doing the same thing. What may not be to the success level you had, but to be able to have your sons pay homage and honor to your career by wanting to do the same thing. That's a big thing, because a lot of kids don't want to do the same thing that their fathers did. Okay. I'm gonna miss the celebrations he had with his perfect season team players. I'm hopeful as Larry said earlier, Flores is off to a good start, but the foundation of success has been laid. The expectations, and I know the three of you and a lot of the viewers, y'all haven't experienced the success, the continued success that I and some of the other older Dolphin fans have experienced. So that we hunger just like y'all, but we also can reminisce and somewhat warm the cockles of our hearts with the success that we had and know that it's coming. But the anticipation that y'all have, it's more like your mouths are watering for it. You're waiting for it. You can't wait. You want it now, but you got to build it. You got to build it. And Shula built it that year, 1970. He built it with taking a team that had only won 4 wins the season before and built that up to a 10-win season, and then took them to the Super Bowl the following year, and then won the Super Bowl for 2 years. Yes, go ahead.
Let me ask Dwayne. Let me ask you this: that season that you just referenced, do you see a lot of parallels to what happened last year with Brian Flores'
Oh yes, I mean, because you see that it was a rocky start. It's just that Flores had to, I guess, however you want to phrase it, the misfortune of having to go through that first rocky season and not have to like Shula didn't have to go through that, because he took a team that had lost 4 wins that had won 4 wins and took that and did the transition. But the transition is the same. The journey is the same. And you have to go through those steps. It's just that Flores, he got it one level lower. If you understand what I'm saying, where he had to endure that Shula-less 4-10 season. But I think now that he's gone through that 5-11, that he is primed to be successful this year. So I do see the correlation, because there was a season of discontent, and now that discontent, that fertilizer. Sometimes you got to take that fecal matter, put it in the ground, and it becomes fertilizer, and it grows. Stuff grows, good stuff grows from it. And I think that's what last season was for the Dolphins, and stuff is going to grow from that. Positive things are going to grow from it. And the one thing that I'll say, his passing, at the very least, he doesn't see, he goes to the ground, and he being Shula, with the fact that he knows that no team ever broke the perfect season. Nobody tied it. Nobody can eclipse it. So he goes to his resting space, knowing that was an accomplishment that nobody ever matched or beat while he was living.
Hey, brother, can I ask you something?
Sure, Esteban.
I want to piggyback back on some of the stuff that Ian was saying. And one of the points that you had brought up that I thought was actually an excellent point that I'm going to miss, which is every time that last team that is undefeated loses, watching all of them celebrate at some point, it's something that we're used to seeing. I know I was. I knew that it was coming to an end when I didn't know he was on a scooter. But when they went to go visit Obama when he was in office, the 72 team went to the White House. And when I seen him in that condition, I was like, I wonder how many years we got left of this.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that it happened. It just, it's just that it happens. It's abrupt, and hey, what can you say? What can you do? Just rest in peace.
I mean,
but as far as like the similarities, like a lot of stuff you heard about Shula, like his discipline, I see that in Flores, and I mean you even see videos of Shula running with the team.
Yep.
Flores does the same thing.
Yep.
He's young. He's an player.
Yeah. He's setting the tone. He's setting the tone. He's He is not asking anything of those players that he is not willing or has done before. Okay, he grew up tough in Brooklyn, New York. He's gone through the grind, and he's still staying physically and mentally strong. And that's what he's asking of his players, to be physically and mentally strong.
He's changing the culture, right? You can, and even down to the small things, like Larry Elm brought up a good point that I've talked about before. Like, this is one of the least penalized seasons I can remember through the last like 4 or 5 regimes we've had. It's always been an issue, especially with the offensive line in terms of the Tannehill era. Think of how many drives got killed on bad penalties, on
the holding
third down.
penalties.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and you can tell the culture is being instilled down to the root of what we're building. And we talked about with Fitzpatrick. You saw the structure in Fitzpatrick game that you haven't seen before, and it's fizzled down all the way down to the line on both sides of the ball. So you can tell the culture is shifting, and that's what we needed. And look at the draft picks. We are going to more of a bully, punch you in the face, give us your best shot back type of attitude. He's changing the whole. He wants us to be tough to play against, which
that's another parallel that I was wanting to ask Dwayne about, because I've actually, man, when I moved into my house, man, I had never seen the Super Bowl games, and I actually sat down, drank some coffee, and watched these games, and you get into a mindset where like there's a switch. And you're watching it, and you're watching them being successful in a championship game. But then when the game's over, you're back to reality, and we haven't even sniffed it. Well, but I know one of the things that stood out to me was, and I'm talking about parallels, man. When I watched that game, I didn't even know who Manny Fernandez was, bro. Wow. But I know he was wrecking shop.
Oh, yeah.
He was being disruptive, a nose tackle. EM's always talking about him. And when he brought him up, I was always had Manny in my mind, and I'm like, I haven't even seen that yet.
Number 85.
And EM always talking about a nose tackle that'll stop the run. Me and Phinsanity, I don't know if you've ever seen her on TD's streams, but we were really upset during the Jets game this year because, I mean, just at the point of attack, we couldn't do anything. We couldn't get, it was, they were just pushing us back. We drafted this Raekwon Davis this year in the draft, and I see the parallels that it's a possibility, and
Benito Jones
history repeating itself possibly. What do you think about that, Dwayne?
Well, you know what, Esteban, I'm gonna take it. The offense, when you think about those great teams that the Dolphins have had, Larry Little, Bob Kuechenberg, Wayne Newman, Jim Langer, they all were physical offensive linemen. You look at the defense they had. You had Manny Fernandez, Nick Bonaconte, Jake Scott, Dick Anderson, physical up the middle. This Dolphin team is getting physical up the middle. And that's where it all begins, in the middle. Now,
everything.
I remember I talked with both of you previously on TD's show about the nose tackle and the importance of it, and some of the players that I mentioned. And I mentioned Raekwon Davis, and we had a discussion about Lecky Fotu and Devon Hamilton, and all those players.
I was on that. I remember you now. I was on that stream. That was me and you, wasn't it? Okay, Okay, my bad. Go ahead.
So the importance of being strong and physical up the middle is critical. Every single Super Bowl winning team, I don't care if you go back to the Dolphins, you go back to the Steelers with Joe Green and Ernie Holmes and L.C. Greenwood, or the Raiders with Otis Sistrunk and Phil Filippiano. You have to be strong in the middle, and that culture, that need has not changed throughout the generations of football. You always have to be strong up the middle, both offensive line and defensive line. And the teams that are the best at it and the strongest at it will always 98, 99% of the time be the winning team in the Super Bowl. And it doesn't matter whether it's a 3-4 defense, 4-3 defense, because you look at the Ravens when they won, they were physically strong up the middle. You look at the Bears when they won, they were physically strong in the middle. Even the Giants when they won, they were physically strong with Leonard Marshall in the middle. And
look at
Jim
how strong
Buccaneers. The Buccaneers.
And even last year, even this past, Kansas City, people, they focus on Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes. They focus on the offense, but look how strong they were on the interior, especially on the defensive side of the football. You know what I mean? And everything. I'm just a believer. Everybody has their own. We might see the game of football different, but my preference is, defense being stout at running the football and stopping a run. You know what I mean? And I'm 100% agreeing with you. If you go back and look at, 98% of the Super Bowl winners, the game is always generally won't come down to the line of scrimmage. Yep. Okay. That gives
that's where the saying "games are won in the trenches" comes from.
Yep. Exactly. Who can consistently reset the line of scrimmage generally wins the football game.
Yeah. It's just, the parallels that we're talking about now, it's just if you just go back to the history of the teams that the Dolphins have had, going back to the 72 teams, their defenses, the way they ran the ball, maybe we're not there yet on running the ball, but then you go to the 80s with Marino. It's almost like we have a little mix of all of that right now, possibly with all the draft picks that we have and what we've done in free agency, where you could see that coming to fruition on the defensive side of the ball and the offensive side of the ball. We haven't even mentioned that they drafted Tua, man. I mean, that's almost
Esteban. You know what I'm doing next
year? Yeah.
I'm going to declare this. This is what I would do next year. If that Houston pick is high and our pick is in the early 20s or in the late teens, buddy, I'm packaging both of them up and I'm trading for that number 2 pick because Lawrence is going to go number 1. And then I'm drafting Penei Sewell from Oregon and I'm kicking him to the right side. And my offensive line is probably the most disgusting line in football right now. So that's what I'm doing next year. And I'm kicking Robert Hunt in the guard and I'm saying, come mess with me, basically.
I mean, you got
bruises. Those field positions after that.
You got big, strong bruises on that offensive line. All they need is some nurturing and some communication and familiarity. They're going to be a devastating unit. And like I was mentioning to you with Larry Little and Bob Kuchenberg and Jim Langer, those 3 guys ran that inside trap to perfection against the Vikings. When you can defeat the interior strength of a defense, the way they did the Purple People Eaters in that Super Bowl, you don't have any worries. And I think that's what the Dolphins are building with these current players. I mean, you look at them, big, can move. And I know people were talking about Solomon Kinley's groin injury. Robert Hunt's groin injury. But
he was killing it before the groin injury, though.
Yep. That slowed him down during that season, but he's healthy. He is going to be a force, and he can move. Okay, those offensive linemen.
Haven't you noticed our 2 tackles between? Because I'm predicting Hunt's probably going to end up with a tackle right now from the sounds of it.
Yep.
Hunt and Austin Jackson are big, but they're athletic. Yep. And then the interior are all phone booth guys.
Yep, they are maulers.
And that's been, if you think about, past teams that New England has had, that's been their blueprint as far as their profile on the offensive line, bro. They've always been heavy on the interior and have athletic guys on the outside. And in theory, that's what you want, because generally the tackles, the right and left tackle, are playing the more athletic guys on the opposing side of the, either a stand-up outside linebacker in the 3-4 or a 4-3 defensive end, and those are generally more athletic guys as opposed to interior guys. So
I think on the O line,
that's the blueprint.
The guy that I have the most anticipation where like I can just something about that guy, man, is Hunt. It just seems like he's going to be a nasty offensive lineman. Like he's really going to I have a feeling that he's going to do good. I've seen some of the tape from that Louisiana, that Raging Cajun. Yeah, that center that they have, I think he's available for the draft next year, but he's the next wrestler. I've seen that dude throw people around like it's like.
Bro, if I want a center next year, I want Creed Humphrey, brother.
What was that?
If we're going center next year, I want Creed Humphrey.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just the mentality that came from that line was actually pretty decent. If you watch some of the tape, that
the Dolphins have been successful, they've always had great center play, and whether that was Jim Langer or Dwight Stevenson, they've always had success when they've had that great center play. You cannot. People laugh at, oh, why you pick a center second round, third round. That's your key to success, being strong in the middle.
Well, I mean, if you look at this draft, the reason why we traded back was because we were going to take Cesar Ruiz, and the Saints took him at 24.
Yep. I believe that. I believe that, and I believe.
You know what I think, Dwayne? I think people who hated on the Austin Jackson pick being that high, if we would have got Cesar Ruiz at 26, they would have understood why they were doing that, because they're not going to take Cesar Ruiz at 18 when really your only threat was Dallas and they took CeeDee Lamb because he fell to him. You're not going to take him at 18 because who was expecting the Saints, who have a Pro Bowl center, to go off? Well, they're going to kick Ruiz, probably the guard, but who was really expecting that, right? So they probably just thought Cesar Ruiz was going to fall in their lap. And then from the sounds of it, that's when Noah Benogany, he was their next player on the board after Cesar Ruiz.
Yeah. That's a good, I think.
And you know what? Even Tannehill's best year, when we had the unicorn line with that left side, right, with Tunsil as a rookie next to Albert, Powell was playing great that year.
Yep.
Yeah.
So even it even resonates with Tannehill's best year.
I mean, despite the bully gate, they evolved into a good offensive line. Exactly. And that's everybody talked about, oh, well, it was Tannehill improving. No, the offensive line improved. The offensive line improved. Jay Ajayi, he started finding holes that the offensive line was providing. You can't be successful without being strong on the lines. I don't care how fast you run, whether you run a 4.2 or a 4.1 or a 4.3. If the quarterback doesn't have time, you're not going to get the ball. So it doesn't matter. You got to have those big guys on the line. And that was one thing that Coach Shula in the 70s, he made sure he had. And he had that depth on that line as well. So I see the similarities, because when you think about the flexibility that the offensive linemen currently have with being able to play center and guard, or guard and tackle, or left guard and right guard, the flexibility is being built. The strength is there. All they need is continuity and the good fortune to stay healthy and to stay as a unit. And when I speak about that unit, that's also including 6, 7, 8, and 9 on the offensive line as well, because they're just as important as 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Because next man up principle, somebody gets hurt in a game, they got to be able to step right in and be a seamless transition between the person that just got injured and the player that's coming in to step up. So that's why I say the whole entire line is improving. You see it. It's almost there. You can taste it. but wait for the whole meal to get completed. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen, young bucks. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Oh yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on, Dwayne.
Hey,
we're gonna get to a
thanks
couple
for
of
having me.
back. No problem. I
Pleasure,
always
homie.
enjoy your insight, brother.
I never
Pleasure,
insult
homie.
you guys, man. I never insult you.
Yeah. It's a pleasure, homie.
All right, man. Y'all take care. Be
Yeah,
successful.
good
All
night,
right.
bro.
Have a
All
good
right,
night, bro. What's going on, Donald?
Oh man.
Man,
What's
look at
good,
y'all.
homie? What's good, man?
What's up,
Man,
dog?
it is good. It is good. It's a sad day. And like I'm saying, I'm just feeling a lot of emotions because I remember when Don Shula got hired by the Fins. My mom was a diehard Baltimore Colts fan, and
Wow.
she watched Shula from when he was there. Because at the time when he got hired by Baltimore, he was the youngest head coach ever in the NFL, 33 years old. And when he went to Miami, Mom said, our allegiance is with the Dolphins. And I remember in 1970, when he got hired, it was the first, you want to call it drama? It was the first bit of drama in the NFL
Tampering?
because
For the
yes,
tampering? Yeah.
yes, indeed. The
Yeah.
Dolphins tampered. They did.
Yeah, for sure.
They did. They did. And they got Shula. They got him away from Baltimore and brought him down to Miami. And I'm telling you, I don't think it's ever been done before, except I think Coach Gibbs might be the only other coach to do it. He's the first coach to ever take an expansion team after 1 year and have them in the Super Bowl. That's why I said Don Shula is definitely the GOAT. Now I know Belichick got more Super Bowls,
Asterisk.
and
asterisk.
that's right, with asterisks. And I understand with Vince Lombardi, hey, that was something in which Don Shula and them and they prepared because he was underneath Paul Brown. Hey, Don Shula understood what it meant to be disciplined and also was not afraid to tell his teams, look, if we do our job, we can earn perfection. I think that's what we have in Brian Flores right now. Brian Flores is not scared to say that we cannot go undefeated. I don't think he has it in his psyche. I think he says we can win every game. And so in seeing this, I think it's a great handoff from one legend to a future legend if he keeps and plays his cards right. There are so many things about Shula that he did that a lot of people don't realize. One, and reason I wrote it in the chat, and you had commented on it. Before there was unrestricted free agency, the Dolphins were the first to endure it with the World Football League in 1974. They lost Larry Zonka, Paul Warfield, Jim Kick all at one time. And they still managed to get back to the playoffs. That was Coach Shula. He played with the deck that he was handed. And so he didn't make no excuses. Also, another thing that he had to deal with, which was to a fault to me, which caused his demise. Don Shula was too loyal to the people he hired. And that was to coaches, and that was also the players. And time could have passed them by, but if he was loyal to you, he was going to stick with you. And I never forget when Tom Oliver Dottie, that was just before they got ready to go and play San Francisco. Tom Oliver Dottie was not a good defensive coordinator. Now, you went from Bill Arnsparger that helped you to get that undefeated season, 3 straight Super Bowls, 71 to 73. You go from him, and then you get somebody like Tom Oliver Dottie, who brings your defense down from where it was in the top 5, top 10 consistently from the 70s, 80s, going into the 90s, and they were the best that they could be underneath him was 16th. When you go up against a team like the San Francisco 49ers, that ain't good enough. No. I'm sorry. That was not that. But Don Shula would not fire him, and Don Shula kept him. And that was the reason why when he stuck with him, even though management wanted to get rid of Tom Oliver Dottie, that's when he went ahead and said, no, it's time for me to go. So I love Don Shula. He is going to be missed. He was such an icon, not only in the NFL, but in South Florida. And what he has done for so many players. I think one of the things in which we in Miami as Fin fans are going to love and respect after looking at ESPN, if you look at the number of coaches and players who have come out and spoke about, like Doug Peterson, I forgot that he was
blew me away.
Yes,
that blew me away today. And like I said earlier, man, I felt bad because again, I'm loyal to the logo. I try my best not to get too personal with players, coaches, or whatnot, because at the end of the day, they're not going to be here forever. That stadium and that logo is going to be in South Florida forever. But the players coaches come and go. So that just blew me away. I was like, man, I was not aware of the impact that this guy had on people outside of the Dolphins organization, amongst, in other NFL circles. It just blew me away.
Dude, Marv Levy today called him his teacher and mentor.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right? And did you guys read the statement that Belichick put out? Belichick actually showed a decent side today with the statement he put out about Don Shula. So, I mean, and Donald, let me ask you this. We talked about, the Dolphins doing a patch and maybe the league wearing it. And we also talked about, I brought up, either at the 3, 4, and 7 yard line or at the 34.7 yard doing something for the 300. What about, you talked about him as how, like, his impact as a coach and, how efficient he was. He was the only coach in NFL history. He's got 4 player of the coach of the year awards, right? He's got 4 of them. What would you think about the NFL renaming that award? Because it's not named after anyone. Why shouldn't that be the Don Shula Award, considering he's the person who not only won it the most, but he's the epitome of what a winner is and what a successful coach is that does it by the book?
Reason, I think you need to go on NFL Network and put that suggestion in, bro. That makes the most sense out of what I heard. Now, I will tell you one thing: when you were making up the suggestions about doing the yard markers, because he had 347 wins at either the 34.7 yard line, the only yard marker you need to mark is the 17. 17 and 0.
No. Yeah, I like that.
Yes.
Yeah,
that is true. Yeah.
I will tell you, I don't know if many of your followers know this or not, but in that game, I watched that game, that Super Bowl in 72 against the Washington Redskins. Do you know the only reason why Washington scored in that game was because Miami was trying to put a statement on the season. Shula said, look, I think it's apropos if we win this game 17-0. And he went for the field goal with Garo Upremian. And they blocked it, and Mike Bass, the safety, picked it up and ran it back for a touchdown. And that's the reason why the final score was 14-7.
And Donald, correct me if I'm wrong, because you were around during that time. You watched them. Wasn't that the only touchdown they allowed in their 2 Super Bowl wins?
Yes. And like I'm saying, that was unheard of. And I don't care if you go to Belichick. I don't care if you go to Kansas City's last one or anything else. That team, and just me personally, I watched them when they lost to Dallas. I watched them when they won against Washington. I watched them when they won against Minnesota. But that 74 game, I believe that the Dolphins had the best offense going. That team was so prepared to really go and win Super Bowl number 3 in 74. But just as you point out, Reason, them losing to the Oakland Raiders in that game, oh my goodness, that hurt me. I still can't stand Davis catching that ball. And Banasek and all them guys from the Raiders. Hey, that's when Madden was coming up, and you got to give Madden his due, what he was doing with the Raiders. So, like I said, Miami did not have any pushovers when they were going through and winning their Super Bowls. They had to kick, claw, and scratch to get out the AFC. You're talking about the Raiders. You're talking about Pittsburgh was coming up. Chuck Noll was an assistant head coach under Don Shula. He had took over Pittsburgh, and they were coming up. They were ascending, and all the rest. So, like I'm saying, it was so many battles I remember watching him lead the Dolphins into, and win, lose, or draw, you still could hold your head up because you knew good and well they did the best they could with what they had. That was that man could coach. He could flat coach. Now I'm seeing that in Brian Flores. I'm seeing that in him, and I like what.
See, I'm the only one not saying that, and the reason why I'm not saying it is I just don't want to put that pressure on him. Like, that's just where I'm at. It's the same thing with the Jordan Love comparisons. When people were comparing him to Mahomes, I was like, I'm not putting that type of pressure on the kid. Like, those are big shoes to fill. That look at Bill Belichick has won how many Super Bowls, and he's still what? What is he like? What does he have? Like, he's like 50 plus, or he's like 60 plus wins behind him still.
Yes. Yeah, I get what you're saying, Reason. Just one day at a time, one game at a time, man.
Yes,
I don't think anyone's ever going to fill those shoes, to be honest with you. Any team. So, but I get the correlation people are saying with the discipline and the structure and the defensive mind, and I get that. I get that. Yeah. And the running, Esteban running the whole correlation with showing how involved he is with the players. And I mean, you saw some of his post-match speeches, some of his post-game speeches in the locker room. Flores, we haven't seen that kind of passion from Gates, Philbin, Cam. We haven't seen that passion since. I mean, you could say Jimmy Johnson, but in all fairness, guys, I said this to EM earlier. Don Shula is the reason why I'm also not a Jimmy Johnson fan, because when Jimmy Johnson took over, and what I look at, not only how this organization started to turn, but how the relationship deteriorated between Jimmy Johnson and Dan Marino, that would have never happened under Don Shula's watch. And next to Don Shula, that's our biggest icon. You walk on eggs, Jimmy. You don't go and play who's. You don't go out and have a measuring contest with Dan Marino. I didn't like that.
Yeah. So, but I will say this about, as far as Jimmy Johnson is concerned. During that time, Marino had started to decline. You could clearly see slippage in his game, physically. You know what I mean? So Jimmy Johnson.
I think he wasn't enjoying it.
In all fairness to him,
wasn't enjoying it.
No, he wouldn't.
Yeah, but in fairness to Jimmy Johnson, he saw that and he gave Marino a chance. You know what I mean? But you got to consider from the perspective that Jimmy Johnson's coming from. He's not tied to South Florida. He's not tied to Miami. You know what I mean? He earned his bones in Dallas. So I think a lot of people have criticized him over the years somewhat unfairly on how he dealt with Marino and handled that whole Marino situation. But I could see why he took the approach that he did with Dan Marino, because clearly Marino had started to decline. And so he wasn't going to hitch his wagon to a 30. At that time, Marino was 35-ish, 36-ish maybe?
Yeah, he was 35.
35-year-old quarterback that clearly his body had started to deteriorate, and it was obvious.
Well, you know what, EM? But I will say this. I don't think the fans were as angry with Jimmy and how he handled Dan as they were in how he handled Coach Shula. He was the one that banned Coach Shula from coming up to the Dolphins facilities because he was saying it's a new era, it's a new time.
I did not know that.
And
I did not know that.
Oh, wow. Yes. And he was the one that broke that from Don Shula coming up there to talking to the team, letting them know what it took to get perfection and all those things. He did that. And that's what really broke it with the Robbie family, Wayne Huizenga, as well as with Jimmy Johnson. That was the reason behind that. Now, as far as Dan goes, when Dan came off that Achilles surgery, Dan could no longer sell a play action pass where he could hand the ball off, fake like he's handing it to the running back, sell it like a Peyton Manning, and then throw the ball. Yeah. He no longer could do that. And Dan refused to go down in saying, guess what? No, I'm not going out that way. I'm going to throw the ball. That's what I made my living on, and that's the way I'm going to do it. It wasn't until that embarrassing playoff loss against the Jacksonville Jaguars 62 to
My
7.
hardest moment hardest moment. I was telling EM this. That was my hardest moment as a Dolphin fan because my mom had started dating my stepfather now just around that time, and that was the first football game he ever sat down and watched with me.
That one hurt.
And we were watching it because we knew this is going to be Dan Marino's last run, and to see Dan Marino look like Mark Brunell and Mark Brunell look like Dan Marino. That was one of the most painful things I've ever seen.
But again, I get the how the game unfolded and the outcome 62 to 7, whatever it was. That was bad enough to take, but you could clearly during that game you saw Marino's struggle, his limitation physically that he had gotten to. And that was the most painful thing to watch for me because Marino and Michael Jordan, like again, I like to say that, I'm sorry, Marino, Michael Jordan, Tim Duncan.
Yes.
All due respect, I got to pay homage to my homie. To Tim Duncan, baby.
The big fundamental, baby.
Exactly. So, I fell in love with them, and I tell people today, now as a young man, I'm loyal to more so I'm loyal to the logo. I try not to get so personal with players, but those three, Danny, Timmy, and Michael Jordan, those three I've gotten the most close, the closest to in terms of following them, their personal lives and all of that. I started doing that as I became a young man, and I could understand the game of football on a different level.
Right.
But that was the most painful. I love Dan Marino, man. He's still my dude. That's my guy.
Yes.
And to see him struggle physically in that game, that was the most painful for me to watch.
That hurt beyond anything. And I think also by us witnessing that, EM, that's the reason what made the fans hunger so much for a QB, a successful QB, in seeing that. But is as much as we dog TD, or TD may be dogged on the subject concerning QB, he's absolutely right when it does come to that. If you got the team from the trenches, like I said, growing up watching that team from '69, watched them when they had only won 4 games that year, watching that team, and then Shula taking over, and then they win in 10. Then they going up and then going to a Super Bowl the following year, and seeing what he did as far as the trench play is concerned. I remember one thing that Jimmy Johnson had started to build was the defensive line. He had Jason Taylor, he had Tim Bowens, he had Darryl Gardner, he had and then Larry he had Chester. Gordon and Larry Chester on the other side. That was some beef up front, and they could just flat shut you down. See, just like y'all can't stand Buffalo. I'm in the same camp with Brian Cox. Brian Cox used to tell after the game how Buffalo would come to the line of scrimmage and tell them, y'all, we getting ready to run this trap play to the left. Thurman Thomas going through the 2-hole, and you can't stop it. And they'll run the play, and Brian Cox said, I'll be if we can't stop it. He knew it. Y'all can't stand that team. But see, Buffalo was building their offensive line like Dallas's offensive line. And Miami's defensive line was becoming on par with the Steelers. The only problem was when they met. That's the reason why I can't stand the Broncos. I cannot stand John Elway and the Broncos. Why? Because they went to that zone blocking scheme where they would cut you down low. One would engage you up top, and then they would cut you below the knee. That's when they outlawed that type of blocking called engage blocking at the corner scrimmage, at the line of scrimmage.
And that defense was dirty with Bill Romanowski too.
Yes.
That defense was just as dirty, right?
Steve Atwater.
Yes.
John Lynch. Wasn't John Lynch on that team?
Lynch had gotten there.
Later. Not that team, but later. He came later.
Yeah, he came a little later. But when I watched that, and I watched them put both Tim Bowens, they put Gardner, and they put out the game, and Rome's out the game. I sat there, I said, this has got to stop. That's the reason why I couldn't I still can't stand Denver. But I'm with you. Brian Flores is getting to the point now where he's beginning to build from the ground up. And I love what we've seen this draft, this off season. And now this is where I want to see if Brian Flores has the moxie of a Don Shula. Don Shula didn't mind taking the responsibility and saying, I'm the coach. And I'll take all the pressure. To me, he did that when he let Chad O'Shea go. And when he allowed Patrick Graham. To me, he can take it.
Agree.
And I think Chan Gailey was also him admitting that, hey, maybe I should let the offense be run by someone who has a lot of experience doing it. Like going with Chad O'Shea was the wrong move. Let's go to the exact absolute parallel on the other opposite end of the spectrum, which is Chan Gailey, right?
That's a great point.
And see, that lets you know Flores, and see, coaches generally are egomaniacs. You know what I mean? Yeah. And generally coaches won't swallow that and say, look, I messed up. I made a mistake, especially first year guys. You know what I mean? So quickly identify the problem. I made a mistake.
Stop talking about Adam Gase like that, EM.
Yeah. we all know who So
but he made sweeping changes even down to positional coaches.
Yes,
it wasn't just main or coordinators. We got a new DB coach. We got a new offensive line coach. Like he made sweeping changes. And you're right, EM. How many egoless coaches do you see? That's admitting that's admitting you didn't put together the right staff, and I gotta correct it. I gotta correct it right away. And you don't see a lot of guys
you don't see that
are humble enough to admit that. And that's a fantastic point.
And I remember when Omar Kelly, when they hired Brian Flores, initially when they fired Tannenbaum, and then they promoted Chris Greer.
Right.
And when we were all a little cloudy on what direction they were going in terms of what coach they were going to pick. So it was like Chris Bouchard in Dallas. It was Brian Flores, and it was
and the Harbaugh rumors from Michigan.
Harbaugh, whatnot. And Omar Kelly, he said when he was talking about Chris Greer, he was talking about how humble and how egoless Chris Greer is. And he's thought all along that Brian Flores could be potentially that he even put, I think he was one of the first ones to put Brian Flores out there as like the leading candidate, so to speak, because he embodies a lot of the same temperaments that Chris Greer, has. And generally, I mean, just human nature, you want to work with like-minded individuals. You want to work with people that see the world as close that you see it. So I remember when he said that, he was one of the first ones to put that out there about Brian Flores. And so, and you look at all of them, even Marvin Allen, when I hear a lot of people talk about him, same egoless, you know what I mean? All about structure, all about discipline, all about putting that work in, you know what I mean? So, that's encouraging,
Let me ask you something. Do you remember when Chris Perkins, he and Omar, because they had a section that was coming on stream together during the season. And he was the one that said, you know what, Miami, because when we first thought it was going to be the coach from out of Dallas who had the lead run. But he was the first to me that came up and said and shared it with Omar. And Omar said, I hadn't thought of it that way. Miami didn't make a move and didn't, because they had a chance to hire my man from Dallas ahead of time. They waited till after the Super Bowl, and then they called Flores back, and then they had the meeting with him, and then that's when they did the hire. So I'm with you. This, to me, this is one of an unselfish team, but it's going to be it's going to remain to be seen how long this team and this concept of winning is going to remain. I just cannot wait for the season to start, if it does start on time.
I can't wait for training camp. These battles on the trenches on both sides of the ball.
Donald,
oh my God. I'm so excited.
Donald, I think the NFL, they're gonna have a season.
Yeah,
they don't give a damn. They don't give a damn. They don't give a damn about the fans being in the stands, bro.
Exactly.
They're going to have a season some way, shape, or form.
Oh,
So,
but did you see that the Phins have a plan in place to have fans in the stadium?
I saw that.
Yes, they're the first to do it.
That.
And I'm saying now that's forward thinking. And I like the way Ross is doing the owner, Mr. Ross is doing it. He's saying, look, I'm giving you carte blanche authority, Chris Greer, and Brian Flores. You all go build a winner. We're gonna think ahead on this, and they're getting ahead of it ahead of time and how they can do this. That's smart thinking.
Yep.
So Donald, what's your? We had 5 wins basically with the NFL version of a JV squad. Okay. So what are you expecting now that we have a legitimate varsity level squad in the NFL in terms of how all the additions to the draft and free agency? What's your expectations win-wise this year so far?
If they do it this way, I really believe that the Phins can win up to 11 games, maybe 12. And this is what I'm saying. Whoever the quarterback is, to build a cohesion with the offensive line, we must establish a run game. No ifs, no ands, no buts. If we get the trenches to operating on both sides of the ball, where we have a good run game, then we can begin to implement and throw in that pass, because we know we got the receivers. We already know we got that. We also know that Fitzpatrick is serviceable. We also know that we got I think a capable backup in Rosen until Tua is ready to play. And just to be honest with you, I'm gonna put it out there. I would not be surprised to see Rosen take over the starting shot in camp. This is where he's got to win it. I would not be surprised to see him do it, because I think it's 2 reasons. And my reason is not just because I want him to be the starter, but it increases trade value too.
Yeah.
Because I heard what you said too. If Rosen comes out and balls out, and let's say he does it not just 1 year, but 2 years, Tua could be that trade bait.
Yeah, exactly.
We just want to win. We want somebody that can take the position and take the bull by the horns and take care of business. Now, if the Phins get that running game going, that's what I'm praying for. The running game will dictate our success, and also the trenches on the D line. If I like Raekwon, and just like I love Tim Bowens, when I seen that they got my man Benitez, oh my goodness, Benito Jones. I'm telling you right now, that's the bond. You're gonna fall in love with this kid. This man's hands are so heavy. He was in practice, he was knocking the center out with his heavy hands, hitting him in the chest. I'm telling you, he has it. He has that it factor to where when they get to running, they're gonna be like, oh no, I don't want that man hitting me. He's low. He's got a low center of gravity, because most of those running backs can do that. And if Miami does this, reason I would go so far as to say they can win up to 12 games, but I don't think so. I think it's going to be more like 11 to 10.
Let me ask you this: in the next 2 to 3 years, could you see our front three in the front three and our front seven? Could you see along that front three? Could you see it being Benito in the middle, Wilkins on the right, and Raekwon on the left moving forward?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? You know what reason? We might see that a lot sooner than we think. I think Benito Jones, if you're going off ability, you know what I mean? I think, bro,
he's one of the truest nose tackles that was in the draft.
He is.
Yes.
And I think, again, Devon Godchaux, along with Rosen, just like Charles Harris, just like Taco Charlton. I'm just waiting on that email.
The magic school bus.
The magic school.
Hey, baby, you forgot about Balaj?
Tickets, please.
Hey, listen. Devon Godchaux has officially been placed on bus watch. Okay, he needs to be sitting at the bus corner.
He's at the bus stop.
He needs to go to the end of the corner and stand at that bus stop and wait for and look out for that bus, because I promise you, it's coming. It's coming a lot sooner than he thinks.
In all seriousness, the guy that I can honestly see making a resurgence is Balaj, man.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
I just kind of have that feeling, man.
I agree. I'm not losing hope.
'Cause he
I'm not
has-
losing hope.
Okay, all right.
I'm not.
This is EM's
I'm
version
not
of
losing
Rosen
hope.
right here.
Yeah. Hey.
I'm being serious,
No,
man.
guess
Bro,
what?
hey, he averaged
I'm with
1.7, but I
you.
kept hearing about the
I'm
hands.
with you.
I kept hearing about the hands, and
No,
this guy
I'm
looks
just
like he
going
eats
based
10
on-
Butterfingers before he
I'm
goes
just going
out.
based on his speed. That's it. Like, I'm really not a fan of his running style, but
To
I'm
be
not
honest with you, Esteban, I think his speed is part of the reason why he can't catch. I've talked about it with Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs can play at 4.2 speed. He can play at the speed he runs. I don't think Balaj can play at his top speed. And that's
But
why
I
I
mean-
think you're running into the problem with catching the football.
Well, I look at it like this. He had like 78 catches the year he got drafted, his last year at Arizona State. So he's put on tape. He's got hands. I just think it's a mental issue with Kalen Balaj. I really do. But again, is the strength of his game improvisation, reading, reading the line of scrimmage and
You need to
figuring
open
things
the
out on
holes
his
for
own?
him. Yeah.
No, that's
Yeah.
not. He's a one cut. He's a downhill runner is what he is.
Mhm.
And I think, and again, look at the players that they brought in. That is the power one gap scheme that they are. If you're going by profiles, that seems to be the scheme that they are implementing. And Flores alluded to that when last year when they hired him, when they asked him what his preference is in terms of his style, physicality, he wants to implement that power scheme. And so again, you can't teach, 235 pounds with 4.42 speed. You can't teach that. So
Yeah.
I'm not, again, it's not like we got a big investment in him. It's not like we invested a first round pick or a second round pick on him. So I'll just say this, based off his profile, I'm going to bring him into camp and see how that
Bro,
works
he got that Stevie Wonder vision at the line of scrimmage, bro.
You're right. You 100% correct, bro. I'm with you.
Bro.
But you know what?
Again,
Reason I will say this about him. At least everybody. The only one that didn't have Stevie Wonder vision back there in that backfield was Mark Walton. Everybody else
I
with
agree.
that
Yeah.
line as atrocious as that line was this past year. That's the only reason why I would give Balaj a pass. And that's the reason why I was also ready to give Kenyon Drake a pass. But after watching him a couple of games and watching him bounce out the hole, because in Alabama, when he was required to run, he did run through the 1 and 2 gaps. He did run up the middle. So it wasn't an issue about him doing it, but he was ready to hit the home run. And so I understood exactly what TD was talking about, and I'm wishing him well. Look at it, he got paid in Arizona too. So, but now I want to see what Balaj does behind this line, because this line ain't going to be no.
You're going to be fighting for snaps behind.
And if you bring him in,
Thunder and lightning.
if you bring him in and he's giving you nothing in training camp, cut him. Cut bait with him.
Package him with Rosen.
Send me an email.
Package him with Rosen and go get a tackling machine for practice.
Yes.
Hey, man.
He'll be waiting.
Walton, man, I'm so tired of the off the field issues where guys just getting kicked off the team incognito. Walton, I love linebackers. When we had Maluga, he didn't last. Then we got the guy from Pittsburgh. What was his name? We brought him in, and he left the team and went back to Pittsburgh.
Joey Porter.
No. Was it Harrison?
No,
I think it was.
I know who you're talking about.
He was the middle linebacker. What was
he was the middle linebacker? Yeah,
but
and
it just seems like every year. And then we were going through it with X, kind of, sort of, in a way. I honestly feel like
Lawrence
X
Timmons.
Lawrence Timmons.
There you go.
Timmons.
I honestly feel like he messed up, and I think his days are numbered, man. I really feel that way.
Who was that?
X.
Yeah.
The Noah Igbenogany. If they use his first year to get his ball instincts, that's not good for him.
The other guy that he produces on defense for us, but I could see maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years. But Rowe, man, because his backup was drafted, man. I mean, I know not a lot of people are high on him, but he does have the same.
See, that's what reason we talked about this the other day. That's what I told him. I said everybody's thinking they're focusing on the single high role, the free safety role. I think he was drafted. as this. That's our future strong safety. He's going to be the Patrick Chung of this defense. Is what he's going to be.
His strengths are when you look at his college game, his strengths are in the box and in the slot.
Are you talking about Jones from Texas?
Yeah.
He's that strong safety. He can cover tight ends. My only thing, because I'm a Texas fan. We're talking about Brandon Jones, obviously, but
Malcolm Brown,
baby. Back. Look, this is what I'll tell you, man. In all honesty, 100%. When you watch rivalry games, man, I'm talking about Auburn, Alabama, Oklahoma, Texas. The guys that perform in those games, it doesn't matter what the records are. The guys that perform in those games, they usually go on to the NFL and produce. So that's why I'm pretty much sold on CeeDee Lamb. He's going to produce. I believe Jalen Hurts, to an extent, is going to have somewhat of a successful career where you're going to see him when Wentz goes down, he comes in, he produces. I'm not saying he's going to have a long-term success of being a starter. It's not what I'm saying, but I could see that he's going to be successful to a certain extent. But Brandon Jones, my only issue with him is his tackling. There's times where he that Delpit, like he's there, he's in position to get the tackle, and he misses.
Esteban, would you say that's bad tackling or bad angles?
Bad angles. I think that's something that Flores can clean up. Other than that, his coverage is exceptional.
Yeah.
Esteban, I wish you would dig that. I wish you would dig up that tape and send that to me, because that's not what I see on film. In the open field, how violent he is attacking the ball carrier. Again, my comparison.
This is what I'm saying.
That aspect of his game in the open field.
If he squares you up and he's got you in his sight line, he'll make the tackle. But if he's in pursuit and you have a shifty guy, that's when you see bad angles, like what Donald's talking about.
Okay. I see.
Like against CeeDee Lamb, with CeeDee Lamb secondary.
I hear you.
Yeah. Watch the OU game. You'll see what I'm. It happened. Look, man, there was 2 touchdowns that CeeDee Lamb got on him, and that's what it was. It was bad angles.
Right.
For the most part, that battle, if you watch the battle between him and CeeDee Lamb, it was 50-50 most of the game. There was times where he shut him down. There was times when CeeDee Lamb got the better of him. It went both ways. You can't say that CeeDee Lamb won that battle the whole game. And I think 50-50.
You know what? That's what's crazy about Brandon Jones and Noah Igbenogany. Both of their best film are against
the rivalries.
No, but they're against really good teams. Like when you look at Noah's film, his best film was against LSU and Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you got to look at.
You know what I mean? People are sleeping on the Alabama game and how good he was in that Alabama game.
To me, that was his best game.
They hold more water because in those games, there's more nerves. That's when you got to step up to the plate. That's when everybody's in your ear that you got to show up. This is a game that you have to show up. If you're going to show up to any game.
But look.
And Herbert struggled against that Auburn secondary and that Auburn front pretty bad too when he faced them.
Yep. But go back to that Oklahoma game. What was the coach thinking about? He's a safety. Why are you putting him on CeeDee Lamb anyway? You know what I mean? He's not a cornerback.
It's because
he's a safety. Why is he man?
He's the best person that they had as far as coverage to cover him. Texas doesn't have Brandon Jones was their best coverage secondary man.
Well, Esteban, if you remember that,
they used him as a hybrid and they put him in the slot. They put him at strong safety. You know,
but remember, it was him and Caden Stearns, and Caden Stearns was hurt that game when they played the Red River Rivalry. And he couldn't play because now that's a safety reason. Make sure you keep that name on him.
I know. I got him. He's I've got him. Him and Javon Holland from Oregon are my 2 top safeties so far that I've dived into for this draft coming up.
Well, the reason why I know Caden is because he goes to the school right up the street from me. I'm here in Cibolo, Texas, and Steele High School. That's where Malcolm Brown. They have a lot of players that have speed. Caden Stearns, as a senior in high school, ran a 4.29. And I'm sitting up there, and they told him, and coach, I remember the coach, he told him, said, do not put that on his college resume. He said, because if you do, He'll never get the end of it. He ran a 4.29.
Wow.
He has that kind of speed, but now he has the size to go along with it. He will knock your block off. That's the kind of safety you want. He's 6 foot now, and I'm thinking by the time he's finished growing, he'll be at least 6'1". That's the kind of safety that you want to have stalking in your backfield. Just tell any of them wide receivers coming across them. If you do, it'll be the last route that you will run today.
So, Donald, we've heard when we made the Brandon Jones pick, Esteban has talked about Brandon Jones a few times because he's watched him the most. But obviously, you've watched him a lot. What do you think of that pick? Because that's the only pick where me and EM have kind of said the jury is out on until we know more about the player in terms of study him a lot more.
After a few 2 or 3 games, I think he's going to show production already. I don't think it's going to take him long.
Well, I'm with Esteban on this. His pass coverage still needs some work, and I think Coach Flores will work with him on that. But the one thing that you cannot deny, and Esteban, you know this as well, run support, hands down, he is it. Yeah. He will rock their clocks.
He's Rashad Jones. He's Rashad Jones. Young Rashad Jones.
He really
is. Called every safety Rashad Jones in this draft, bro. There's been like 3 guys where he's like, yo, that's Rashad Jones.
No.
But on the
no.
You called Grant Delpit Rashad Jones, bro.
Right. And listen. What did I say? I broke down. I'm talking about different aspects of the game.
Yeah, I know.
Grant Delpit does remind me of Rashad Jones.
He's just a worse tackler.
His inability to cover. But this kid reminds me of Rashad Jones in his ability in an open field when he's attacking a ball carrier. This dude is violent. I was like, wow.
Yes.
He's still progressively getting better. He still has room to grow to get better.
Noah Igbenogany is very physical too. Very physical.
I'm telling you, Flores is going to do something with Brandon Jones, man. Don't worry, because he definitely has all the traits that you see in what Rowe's doing on tight ends. Brandon Jones can do all that, man. He can.
Yeah,
and I feel that Flores he's going to coach him up pretty quick, man. I think he's a quick learner.
I hate that he wasn't able to test at the combine. That way we can get a better idea in terms of his speed and agility. But from what he puts on tape, from what he puts on film, when he puts the tape that I've seen, this kid he's got more than enough speed to he's got more than enough. So we'll see. But I can see the level of intrigue. Why there was a high level of intrigue to select him in the 3rd round and not trade up for one of these other safeties that everybody else was banging the table for. Because his versatility, I mean, you can't deny that. He's consistently put that on tape since he's been at Texas. And again, I think everybody was so disappointed with it because with them selecting him at that point, and I was too.
It's because it's because Ashton Davis was like in spitting distance at 68, and we all knew Gase took him Gase took him just to give it to us because he knew Gerald Alexander was our DB coach. Like he was playing games, bro.
You should expect with Brandon Jones is if he gets a turnover, he's gonna try to do something with that turnover. If he gets an interception, he's gonna try to take it to the house. I mean, like he's aggressive once he has that ball, man. I see that in him.
He is.
He has another dimension to the special team, you know. So,
but I'm with you, Reese and EM concerning Jones is because McKinney was still out there. I think it was two of your top safeties were still there, and we had a chance of getting him at 30, but we took Igbenogany. And then when it was time to get Jones, I didn't really complain too much about the pick because they had got Raekwon, I think, right before.
See, that's the position they put themselves in was they were either going to go safety or defensive tackle. And I know Flores' mentality was more like, well, if we develop a tackle, the secondary is going to come along anyway. We just got to coach him up.
And you saw the fist pump.
But again, look at when they extended in terms of, again, we talked about this on several streams before. All you need to play that single high safety role because of the talent that we have in our secondary, you just need an athlete there. They already have one of those on the roster in Adrian Colbert. There's not if he would have came out this year, he probably would have been the most athletic safety in terms of his, his testing, his 40 time and all of that, then probably any safety that came out this year. So I saw when they select, I think they prioritized Raekwon McMillan. They did not want to trade up because that would have potentially could have jeopardized them selecting him where they got him. And I thought that, the fallback plan, and they extended Adrian Colbert as well. They extended him in the offseason. So when they selected Brandon Jones, again, I was disappointed until I dug into his tape. But again, I think they drafted him to be our future strong safety and not free safety. I think they're going to roll with Adrian Colbert into training camp, and they're going to give him an opportunity because all you need is an athlete. That's really all you need. And then again, with Byron Jones and Xavier Howard on the perimeter, in theory, things will be simplified because you don't have generally 8 times out of 10 they're going to have their man locked down. So the safety in that single high role just needs to be his primary focus needs to be on the middle of the field. Their reads will be simplified. And again, all you need for the most part is an athlete, a guy that can cover as much field as fast as possible. And that kid, Adrian Colbert, he is not lacking in athleticism. So I can see the strategy. I can see the intrigue with the pick, the versatility that this kid brings. I can see the high level of intrigue. So again, that told me the fact that they didn't trade up for anybody. They were perfectly content in sitting there and waiting and selecting him and taking that approach.
But
we'll see how it plays out.
With what happened off the field with X, and as much as we're paying him on his contract, that we compromised on that 3rd pick in the draft, and we had to go with Noah instead of what we probably would have done, which was the safety or a center, or we could have done so many other things. I felt that we compromised because it just puzzled me and Reason. We were like, what the heck? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we were a bit disappointed. Not that this kid's not going to transition and work out, but when you make that selection, it almost is like writing on the wall that, for me, it had something to do with this guy's off the field issue. He was injured, his contract. It's just too many strikes against this guy. He's got too much going against him. I'm not saying that I don't like X, but I'm just like, if you're just looking at it from the outside looking in without being critical, like, it just screams to me that it just didn't make sense to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree with you.
Something doesn't make sense.
Let me ask you a question.
You start questioning why. You know what I mean? I still question, like, think about that at some point throughout the day. Is it me? Am I crazy, or does it? I mean, it just really seems like the writing's on the wall already for X.
Well, 2 things, Esteban, I would say to that is, one, remember, X is not a Flores guy.
Yep. So we say about all these guys, Donald.
Yes.
You gotta look at when they're getting cut. They're not. Flores got no loyalty to them. So
yes,
that's another point that Donald just brought up, man. I mean, he's just so much going against this guy.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
So that's one thing. But I would ask Reason and EM and Esteban. I would ask you this. To me, the turning point in the draft where we got a chance where I began to get some confidence and also believe in both Greer and Flores. When J.K. Dobbins went, right when the Ravens went up and took him, right before Miami was getting ready to pick, and Greer made the call and shipped that 5th round pick to go and get Braden from Frisco and bring him in. When I saw that, I said, now that was just pure genius. I thought that was probably to me, that was the best point in the draft, not only getting Raekwon, but him maneuvering to get a running back that can complement Jordan the way that they can this year. To me, that told me all that I needed to know about Greer and Flores and having the confidence that they know what they're doing right now.
Yeah,
And one of the things we kept going on about, Donald, was, I personally, Jonathan Taylor is my favorite running back in this class, and I really think, guys, in Indianapolis, he's going to be up there for Rookie of the Year, 110%. But we always talked about how DeAndre Swift and J.K. Dobbins fit what they were trying to do because we saw it. What were they trying to do? They were trying to create thunder and lightning. And with Breda, whatever you want to say, he was better than anything you could have got on day 3. That's hands down, right? And what did they do? They went out and they got that guy that fits that profile of being the lightning to Jordan Howard's thunder. And you can what's crazy is when you can see the vision without the vision fully being pieced together, that's when you know they're doing something right. You know what I mean? It's not that they're making it obvious. It's that when football minds, like all of us, start to see, okay, they're doing this, usually we have those thoughts or those visions in our mind because we've seen it done successfully before. Yes. So with Thunder and Lightning, think of how many, Austin Eckler and Melvin Gordon, Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman when they went to the Super Bowl, right? Like you see it, you know what I mean? And it's nice to see that we're not no longer leaning on just one guy to carry the workload, and then we're going to sprinkle in a bunch of jabronis here and there that are going to, not really do anything and be beneficial.
And I like the fact that they brought in veterans. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Veteran running backs.
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna be so huge.
And short years.
Yeah. And again, they're young players in the middle of just beginning their prime. And again, that veteran presence, that veteran knowledge is going to be huge in terms of communication with the offensive line, in terms of pass protection. It's going to be huge moving forward. So again, we all know how I love DeAndre Swift. I wish we would have found some way to get him. But again, I think Raekwon Davis, in the grand scheme of things, that's why I think they prioritized him. Yes. He's going to be the more impactful player. That's why they did not want to risk.
Me and EM have talked about this. We think when it's all said and done, take two aside, he could be our best player of this draft because I said it to EM. When you look at his profile, when you look at his body, when you look at what he's done, doesn't he remind you of Chris Jones when Chris Jones was coming out?
Yes, he does.
Yeah, he does. He does. And Chris Jones fell in his draft the year he came out as well for the 3rd round.
Yeah.
He fell in the draft as well. So there's a lot of parallels.
Y'all get me too excited for the season.
I am we all know how I love me some Tua Tagovailoa.
Yes.
But Raekwon, when they got him, I didn't have a voice for 4 days, man. I couldn't talk for 4 days.
Were you guys watching, Donald? Donald, were you watching when he came on the stream just to give it to Ball Game and TD and everyone?
Yes, I did. I just said that.
And again,
I choked on my pizza, man. I said that.
And again, I want to say again, if I offended anyone, I am sorry for that. But I could not contain myself. Oh my God. So yeah, better days are coming. But I love that. I think I'm with reason. Raekwon Davis, I think, in the bigger picture, he's the more valuable asset, the more valuable piece. And I think that's why they did not want to do anything in terms of a trade up and then have to trade back up to get him. They did not want to jeopardize any situation that was going to put them in jeopardy. It put them selecting him in jeopardy. So I think that highly of this kid.
If you guys want to know who I would have picked with the 70th pick, if I was going safety, and this is no offense to Texas fans and Brandon Jones fans, I would have taken Geno Stone. And he was on my safety list. He was considered a sleeper. And I believe he went in the 4th round to the Baltimore Ravens, 4th or 5th round to the Ravens. And everyone's calling him the potential secondary steal of the draft. And, when you look at, me and EM, we always talk about how, when you look at the model of what we're doing, you look at the Patriots, but also look at a team like the Ravens, right? Like Zach Seiler. Why did we get him? Because he fits what we were trying to do. And the fact that the Ravens saw what Geno Stone is going to be in their secondary. That even kind of made me a little bit more salty too, because I was like, man, if this guy turns out for them and Brandon Jones ends up being a slot guy for us, because guys, I'm going to say this. Would you be surprised if Noah develops the ball instincts, looks to get better, starts turning his head, a little bit more before the ball comes to get away from those penalties, and he takes X's job? And what if Brandon Jones, because he's like I told EM and I've said it on stream before, when I looked at Brandon Jones, I've only watched a couple hours of him. The best stuff I saw from him was coming out of the slot. So what if he's going to take McCain's job and Noah's going to take X's job, and then Adrian and Rowe and they're just fillers until we get it figured out maybe next year back there. I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility when you look at how good Brandon Jones was in the slot.
I agree. I can see that. I think that's a possibility, but him.
And we run so many press man EM that it's going to be neat. We're going to need that third guy, right?
But I look at it like this. He's a natural safety. I don't want to play him primarily and try to make him out to be a slot guy, because I don't think he has natural cornerback.
He had almost 400 snaps in the slot last year.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. Probably because they didn't have anybody else to put out.
No, it was what Esteban was saying, right?
Yeah.
Because CD would move inside. He wouldn't just be out on the boundaries, right? They'd kill you with slants over the middle too.
Exactly.
Right?
What is
I think his strength.
Attributables. It's the attributables that affect like his overall like profile, like what you're wanting to see. You're not seeing it. And he's going to be more of a specialist.
I'm just saying.
So I mean,
and that's if you look at Patrick, but if you look at Patrick Chung, if you go break down Patrick Chung's game, that's in essence what he's made a career out of. You know what I mean? In New England. So, and this kid, he had, again, versatile. He can do that, but I mean, I just don't want to play him primarily there. I'm more comfortable with him playing safety as opposed to a one of the three cornerback positions. But we'll see how it all works out.
He probably be on special teams for a while before he even get a chance to sniff that lineup right up in there. Because that's something I'm listening to Brian Flores. The one thing that he points out more than anything, he talks about special teams. Then getting that when they get the chance to get in that lineup to do their job and take care of business, and then they're ready for increased responsibility. It's going to be interesting to see how all of them are. But Reason, I just want to tell you did an excellent job calling out that wide receiver from Arkansas State. That young man. Now that's the one that I'm looking for.
Find a spot for him.
Yes.
Find a place for him. I don't care where it is. We have to get that athleticism on the field in some capacity.
Agreed.
I mean, out of some way, shape, or form, please find a way to get him on that 53-man roster.
Donald, I want to. Yeah, well, I think when Malcolm. You know what I think Malcolm Perry's going to do? I think you're going to see him in 4 or 5 receiver sets. But you know what I think he's going to do? Esteban, I think you're going to see that guy running a lot of RPO this year when they instill it, because Tua's not going to be on the field and you're not going to want to run it with Fitzpatrick. So you bring in Malcolm to run the RPO. But Donald, I wanted to say to you, because obviously you watch a lot of college football, right? So
yes, sir.
Where was I going with my whole question? What were we talking about before the Malcolm Perry?
Oh, we were talking about Merritt.
Merritt.
Oh, Kirk Merritt. There you go. Let me ask you this. When you look at Kirk Merritt's profile, when you look at his size, Donald, and I'm sure you've watched your fair share of Alabama games, doesn't he kind of fit just an NFL, like a shredded Alabama receiver profile? Like he looks like he's got the speed, he's got the hands, and another guy I'm going to say, Donald, go look at Matt Cole.
Yes.
I look at him and I'm like, whoa. Like, to me, the Alabama receivers that Tua used to throw to, I look at Kirk Merritt, I look at Matt Cole, and I look at Albert Wilson as fitting that profile perfectly for guys that can throw over the middle, get that yak after they get the ball in their hands and just take it to the house. Like, aren't you kind of starting to see what they're doing with the receiving core now too?
Well, you know what reason? It's funny you bring that up because with Merritt and Cole, if I'm not mistaken, I know Merritt was. I want to say both of them went to East Mississippi Junior College, and they won the national championship for junior colleges. And then that's when they went to their colleges that they currently were drafted out of or picked up as unrestricted free agents. Those individuals play ball, and that's something that I wish Texas would develop a lot more here, is the junior college programs, to whereas they can transition and go to the big colleges like your Texases, your A&Ms, your Baylors, your Rices, your all those big schools that are here in Texas. Those guys with Alabama and Mississippi pedigrees find a way to make it to a football field. And that's the thing that Shula had with Alabama. See, everybody think everything started with Nick Saban. No, everything started when Alabama hired David Shula, and he was their coach and their offensive coordinator at Bama during Gene Stallings' tenure at Alabama. They always have a relationship between Miami, the pro team, and Alabama, the college. And Nick Saban is continuing that trend to let and make sure that the Miami Dolphins know about the players that are coming in. That's the reason why I was real surprised that they passed up on McKinney when they had a chance to get him. But I'm looking forward to seeing these receivers. And EM, that's one bus ticket I think you can get ready to print out. And that's on Albert Wilson. I'm telling you right now, I could see Merritt or Cole sliding right up in there, saving that $10 million.
And listen, I'm high on, I love the fact that they were able to get them, especially in that undrafted territory. I love both of the kids' athletic ability. I am extremely high on both of their profiles, but let's not get ahead of ourselves now. They are hanging on to Albert Wilson for a reason.
That is. You let me know when Albert Wilson can jump a 49-inch vertical.
I hear you. I understand. But hey, listen.
That we're talking about. He's not a Flores guy.
Reason. Listen, I'm not trying to knock either one of those kids. But again, doing it at Arkansas State is totally different than doing it in the NFL.
Oh, great.
So Albert Wilson has done it at a high. He's perfect for that role they have him in now. And again, I don't know why they're hanging on to him. This kid has a $10.5 million cap hit.
It's because when he returned, me and you have talked about this. Those last couple of games, it looked like he was getting his feet back.
Exactly.
And I think they want to see what they have. And like I said, when you look at the athletic profile of what Tua throws to, it's Merritt, Cole, and it's Albert Wilson at the top of that list.
So them supplanting Albert Wilson, me getting that email from Flores, I don't know. I will be. We kind of need to push back on that for now.
No, guys, you know what needs to happen
for now.
With Preston Williams, he really needs to hope he can get right back into the form he was before that injury.
Yeah, he better.
This receiving core ain't going to wait for him to get back to what he was. I'll tell you that. But guys, we're going on 2 hours and 15 minutes almost. I'll go through each one of you. We'll start with Esteban. Just give me final thoughts.
Final thoughts would be just thankful for the day, and it's just sad to hear about Shula. That's just a piece of my childhood, piece of my heart. Went away today, but it's all right because we got the replacements. We got Flores and we got all these young guys that got drafted, so we got something to look forward to.
Appreciate you coming through, Esteban.
Take care, Esteban. We still got to hook up for the season, my man.
Donald, anything you want to say?
Hey, I just appreciate you all letting me on and just
anytime,
bro. We love having you on, brother.
Hey, Mr. Young, anytime, my friend.
Yeah, you see that StreamYard link? You jump
anytime.
Yes,
whatever
sir.
We got going on.
Well,
you already know what time it is.
Y'all just don't know. When I hear and I want to get some knowledge about how the schemes are going, how players are going, and it's not just y'all are familiar not just with the Miami Dolphins. I know you all are Fin fans like we all are. but you all are knowledgeable about the NFL. I can listen, even if I don't agree, I can listen and learn from gentlemen like yourselves, Ball Game, even TD and Phins. I appreciate you all. You just don't know. I learn just as much when I'm on here, just listening and don't say a word than anything else. But I appreciate you letting me just give him some memories from Coach Shula. That man, like I said, he changes you. And when you see you can do it with not with a bad attitude, but do it with class. That's what makes it so special. So he will be missed. And I appreciate y'all, man. I love you. I cannot wait to see y'all back on the panel so that way I can get on there and laugh and make sure you bring the Magic School Bus with you.
Hey, and Donald, don't sell yourself short, brother, because you dropped gems tonight for us about Shula that none of us knew. So, exactly. We learned from you. So,
hey, I don't know if I told you before, Mr. Young, but I always listen to you, and I always, just like you say, you learn from us, we're learning from you as well, my friend.
Triple OG always. Status, brother.
Everybody, you Ball Game, maybe not TD so much, but everybody else, absolutely.
Yes, indeed. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate it. And Reason, one last thing, and Ian, one last thing. Probably one of the best quotes, and I hang up and I'll be quiet on this. One of the best quotes I heard was from Bum Phillips when he talked about Don Shula. And that's when they had the matchups between Earl Campbell and the Dolphins on Monday Night Football. One of the best quotes I've heard. He said, Don Shula is one of the only coaches I know that can take yours and beat yours with his's, and he can take his's and beat yours with his's. I'm telling you, that man, that was the ultimate compliment. And I said, you're exactly right. He will find a way to beat you. Y'all take care and have a blessed night.
Stay safe, Donald.
All right,
y'all too now.
Appreciate you, man. Always good having Donald on.
Oh yeah, always. But yeah, I think today, reason for myself, initially when I heard, like we talked about earlier, when I heard he had passed away, it was sad. Any member of the Dolphin community, you hear, unfortunate situation like this come up, you're going to be saddened for a little bit. But I tell you, hearing the level of respect in the celebratory of his life, outside of the Dolphin community, I was sad initially, but I quickly transitioned. I quickly transitioned to more refreshing or more, I was surprised because again, like I said, I had no idea that Shula had this kind of impact off the field. You know what I mean? To people outside of the Dolphin community. And once I saw that, man, that was so refreshing. So I already had a high level of respect for Don Shula, obviously for being a Dolphins fan, and obviously for what his contributions to this 100+ year history of our game. But again, when I was, that sadness, when you hear anybody passing, I quickly transitioned to it was more of a celebratory feeling because again, like I said, I think he was even more impactful off the field than he was on the field. We know how successful he was on the field. So again, it was sad, I'm sad, we all lost a legend and, he will definitely be missed. But people need to be mindful of the level of impact, the impact that he had on the personal lives of these individuals. And ultimately, that's the most important thing when you think about it, when you're comparing it to what he did on the field and off the field. So, yeah, man, just this needs to quickly transition to more celebratory feeling of his life, his contribution to just society, bro. Oh, you know what I mean? So, yeah, man.
Well, yeah. Rhino said it best, and he said it wasn't a sad day for me. It brought back so many memories for me. And you know what, Rhino? Initially, I was quite sad. I won't lie to you. Like, the reason I'm such a big football fan, the reason why I'm such a big Dolphins fan is, like I said in my intro, is because of Marino. And if it wasn't for Shula, I wouldn't have Marino, right? Like, Marino was literally Dan Marino and Mario Lemieux and Michael Jordan were my three idols growing up. Okay, because I look at Michael Jordan. To me, to this day, Michael Jordan is still the best individual athlete of any sport, to me, it's Michael Jordan. I don't care what anyone says about Tiger Woods. It's Jordan, man. And when I look at Shula, I'm in agreement with Rhino. Like I said in my opening, I started thinking about that 92-93 AFC Championship game and spending the day with my dad and having that memory. So it started flooding back good memories. You know what I mean? So I get it, man. And you know what, EM, I was just as surprised as you. When I saw Doug Peterson come out and when I saw all that stuff, I was like, you know what? He wasn't just a great coach. He wasn't just a class act. He was a mentor and he was a teacher to so many, right? And but yeah, guys, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. We're going to be back on Wednesday. We're going to have our show on the offensive line, the draft picks, and the outlook of the offensive line. And we're going to have on Matt Valdovinos from Blue Chip Scouting, former offensive lineman at the collegiate level. He's going to come on. We're going to go over the draft picks. We're going to go over the outlook. That's going to be an early start time, guys. That's going to be at 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central on Wednesday. And then Friday, we're going to come back. We got the show we were going to do tonight. We're going to do it Friday night. We'll let you guys know on the day of the time we're going to go. And me and EM are basically going to do the topic we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a bunch of things regarding the topic. And then we're going to bring some of you guys on, and we want to hear your take on the topic at hand. And I know when I told EM this topic idea that popped in my head, he was really excited about it. He's like, you got to make sure you fit it around my schedule because I know he wants to pull out the Magic School Bus for this one. So, guys, that's our schedule. We're going to be back Wednesday at 5, and then we're going to be back Friday night. We hope you guys all join us. We appreciate all of you taking the time out on your Monday night because I know start of the week it's the worst and the most brutal day for a lot of people, but nothing but love, people, appreciation, and we hope you all stay blessed. Fins up, Fin Nation. This is EM.
Fins up. You already know what time it is.